Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you tonight. Cardinal Dolan, wonderful to see you too. As a fellow New Yorker, this has certainly been a year of ups and downs for our K through 12 education system. And I think where you and I are here in New York, it's been starkly different than the rest of the country. But we can safely say the majority of K through 12 children across the nation have experienced a negative impact when it comes to their education. We are seeing some bright spots of innovation and sort of awareness and maybe a new awareness of educational options. What have you seen that's giving you hope right now for the future of K through 12 education?
Sure. Campbell, first of all, it's good to be with you too. I appreciate the gracious invitation from the American Federation of Children. It was good to hear Bill with the gracious introduction, and I'm just so honored to be with you, to be part of something sponsored by an endeavor that I've appreciated for a long time, the AFC. So thanks again, and I'm humbled and honored with the Walton Award. So thank you, everybody. You're right, Campbell. It's sort of to quote from Dickens, it's sort of been here in New York, the best of times and the worst of times. The good news is our numbers are way down. The bad news is we really had to go to hell and back to get here. It's been tough since the middle of March. You know, you're not going to be surprised to hear me say, Campbell, that God can bring good out of evil. And he has brought some good. And when it comes to the enterprise that you and I feel so passionately about, the education of our beloved kids, there's been some difficult moments. Our schools just had to abruptly stop. There has been some good come from that, I think. For one, there's like this earthquake of appreciation for the necessity of our kids being in the classroom, the wisdom of our educational system, the fact that our kids need their schools, the fact that our kids in quality schools happens to be the glue in a way that keeps our culture and our society going. I mean, parents can't go back to work. Everything else is sort of disjointed because our schools aren't up and running. So I'm hoping this sort of deepens our beloved country's appreciation for schools and really prompts us to make some of the reforms, some of the renewal that you and I, Campbell, and certainly the American Federation of Children have felt to be long in coming, too long in coming in regards to educational justice. Secondly, I think it's also taught us how with a lot of creativity we can stay in touch. We all know that the distance learning was nowhere nearly as effective as being together in the classroom, but at least we didn't give up. And at least people sort of swallowed hard and took a deep breath and said, well, we can't just abandon our kids. And finally, number three, I just like to say, and of course, I can only speak from personal experience about our cherished Catholic schools, but boy, when I saw the grit and the determination and the expertise and really a spirit of heroic sacrifice among our teachers, our principals, the priests in our parishes, our parents in our neighborhoods to get the kids back in a very safe, secure, sanitized environment, anticipating all the stuff that might go wrong. I'm just saying, hallelujah. There was another good thing that the Lord brought from this. So, yep, a lot of setbacks, a lot of adversity when it comes to our schools, but I think in the long run, we're learning some good stuff too.
You know, I think as you certainly know, and most people in this who are watching tonight know, it's been the case for quite a long while that those with financial means can already choose the best education for their son or daughter, and you know, are probably thriving more than others even in this moment. And that's because they can decide to move to a good district or make a tuition payment. But you've been part of a movement that's been going on for decades now to try to give lower income parents and families more control over their K through 12 education. Are there any changes you're experiencing in that dialogue that may be different from what's the conversation we've been having for the past 10 to 20 years, it feels like?
I hope so, Campbell, because look, we all have to admit, those of us who are passionate about justice in education and choice in education, like the AFC, like the Catholic Church, Uh, we feel very strongly that this is a matter of justice. This is a matter of civil rights, and we got to make some progress. And I think we're beginning to see some. I was kind of inspired back when we had the CARES Act. Remember last April, that it almost seemed to be a given that everybody, all sides, both parties came together and said, we got to help our parents, so we got to help our school kids, no matter where they're at. Boy, to hear that admission that our kids were in schools where their parents have chosen to send them, not necessarily to the government schools, they said these folks need help too. I wanted to thank Almighty God and light some candles over in St. Patrick's Cathedral, just to thank God for that progress that we've made. That we had we certainly had the executive branch, we had both houses of Congress say, we got to get help to everybody. Maybe this will be the beginning of not wasting time on these silly, superficial arguments to keep some kids from getting the parents the aid that they need to send their kids to the school of their choice. Here's another thing that's happened, Campbell. Like you said, it used to be so unjust in that our wealthy parents could exercise that choice, including, by the way, a good number of parents of members of Congress and the executive government and the judiciary, who sometimes aren't for us on this issue. Our poor kids suffer more. Well, guess what? Because of the pandemic, there are more poor kids because their parents have lost their job. They can't pay their rent. They're wondering about when are we going to go back to work. They scraped and scrimped and scrounged and depended on scholarships like come from our inner city Catholic schools program, like come from the American Federation of Children. They depended on that in the past. They're dependent more than ever. So I think the urgency of it, of giving our poor kids from poverty level families their choice in education, I think that's been accented because of the pandemic.
You talk about politics. I think you could argue that part of the origins of our political divisions in this country right now have stemmed from decades of lackluster educational achievement for some, abandonment by the educational establishment for others. But as we're living through this moment of social unrest, why do you think education reform has been left out for the most part of the daily conversation in the media or in social media?
Boy, I ask myself that a lot, Campbell. You're right. Because of the duties that I have to do a lot of traveling, not only around our beloved country, but even internationally. Unfailingly, do I hear my brother bishops or pastoral leaders, lay leadership, families, parents say in other countries, we admire the United States of America a lot. We are flabbergasted that your educational system is dragging, that it's not as effective as the educational system in other countries. They also say, and we can't for the life of us understand why you don't have choice in education. Any enlightened democracy, any civilized nation has that. Did I tell you the story, Campbell, when Pope Francis was here 5 years ago? We went to one of our magnificent inner city Catholic schools, all poor kids. And the Holy Father went in to visit some of the kids. And in there, I introduced him to some of our benefactors of the inner city scholarship fund. And in the car on the way back, he said, now, who are those people again that I met? And I said, Holy Father, they're our benefactors. They're the reason those kids can be there because they donate money for scholarship. And he says to me, Campbell, get this, but it illustrates what I'm saying. He says, but wait a minute. You have to raise your money for these excellent schools that are educating the poor. Doesn't the government help you? And I said, Holy Father, it does not. And he said to me, well, this is one of the few countries in the world that I'm aware of that don't do that. This injustice that's done seems to baffle the world. And it sure mystifies people like you and me and the AFC, Campbell. I'm hoping the coronavirus, because of the tragedy, because of the urgency that we get, brings some solution. But I'm just hoping, everybody pays lip service to the fact that we've got to raise up the quality of our education. I don't think you'd ever find anybody to disagree with that. You'd think we'd sober up and say, well, we've been trying to work on this for a long time. What haven't we done? What is missing here? Obviously, just pouring more money into our government schools doesn't seem to be doing it, because we're as much concerned about the poor quality of education in some areas of our nation as much now as we were 40 years ago. The answer is right before our eyeballs. It's to give parents a choice in education, to bring in some justice here. So I'm hoping we get there.
Since so many Catholic schools have been dedicated to this mission of helping minority, low-income, middle-income families get a modestly priced, great education, how do you feel when the opponents of education reform sort of spread this myth that giving families options like charter schools or private school scholarships or education savings accounts is perpetuating this old system of segregation?
Well, Campbell, it's not going to surprise you that I bristle, and I'm glad you called it a myth. It's a big myth. In fact, Campbell, let me share this with you. I know we got to change our vocabulary. I don't like using the word private schools. I don't like using the word public schools. Our schools are public; they're open to everybody. I don't mind using the word government schools and independent schools. I don't like private schools because it seems like we want money to buy more rugby uniforms or to buy fancy clothes for our students. We don't. The majority of our kids are poor. The majority of our kids are middle class to poor. Oh, they're minorities. We don't ask for baptismal certificates. We take anybody, anytime, anyhow, anywhere, and the poorer, the better. So this myth of supporting these wealthy, fancy pants elite schools, that's not what the American Federation for Children wants. That's not what we want. We want to help all kids everywhere. Can you remember, Campbell? I know the American Federation for Children was involved in this. It goes back a couple administrations. No child left behind. And I mean that. No child anywhere. Shouldn't we kind of rally and be united to help all our kids? The address of their school doesn't seem to make as much difference as the fact that they're in a good quality school. And anything we as a society and a nation and a state and a municipality can do to facilitate that is going to increase the level of educational quality in our country.
Cardinal, there has been an effort at the federal level to provide more options for families, more support for educational expenses due to COVID. Some governors have moved swiftly to help families with private school scholarships, home education expenses, and other types of emergency relief grants that go beyond the district school donors and directly to families. You were involved in the advocacy efforts this summer. Tell us more about that effort and what went on.
Yeah, this effort, Campbell, may have been a little unique because it was predicated on a crisis. But as I said earlier, that may enhance our appreciation of the urgency of getting aid to all of our kids and parents, no matter what school that they are in. I'll tell you this, the governors of states that have implemented what you just described, some type of direct aid to parents and kids in all of our schools, even the non-governmental ones, rejoice, and they're not going to go back on it. Before I came here to New York, I was Archbishop of Milwaukee, and decades ago they had introduced the educational choice program that was flourishing. When I was there, we had a Democratic governor. Philosophically, he was less than enthusiastic about it, but he said to me, I'm not about to roll it back because it is working. And in fact, he said, I'm probably going to take heat for this. I'm going to increase it a bit. He said, I probably can't do it as much as you'd like, but he said, I'm not about to scale it back, and I'm going to increase it. He was a pragmatic, shrewd politician who knew that society needs quality education. One of the greatest and most effective ways we got to make our schools safer, more effective, and to raise kids out of poverty is to support educational choice. He did it. Tons of governors are doing it. Why our federal government seems to be so reluctant is beyond me.
If you could wave a magic wand to get us on a path toward healing, toward justice in our educational system overall, what would you do?
You know what? Do you hear anybody now, Campbell, who's not saying, boy, we're divided, boy, we're fractured, boy, we're disjointed, boy, we seem to be at everybody's throat? It's almost like everybody's saying, I wish there was one cause, one issue that could unite us. Well, my magic wand would be to say, that's educational choice. That's our beloved children. Can't we all rally around our kids? Can't we all admit that all kids at all schools need help? Can't we all admit that there's a wisdom to respecting parental choice, that our parents are the primary educators of kids? Yeah, they enter into a sacred alliance, and I use that word purposely, with our government schools, and hallelujah. And that's why I fight to help our public schools as well. But it's still the parental choice, okay? Couldn't we all just rally and say, look, Americans are very wise, shrewd, savvy people. You might disagree on a lot of stuff. There's one thing, if you look at that, you know, if we enhance the educational opportunities for our kids, the choice that parents have, and if we give them the freedom to go to the school of their choice, guess what? The statistics show cleanly that in both our government and our independent schools, things get better. It helps both. Would that be the magic wand to wave over this mess that everybody admits we're in and says, here's one issue around which we could all be in solidarity?
So true. As my last question, let me just ask you to leave us with something to think about, something that we can do as kind of a takeaway from this event. What do you hope our viewers have heard tonight? What would you hope that people would be inspired to do?
I hope they're going to pay a lot more attention to the American Federation for Children. I'm so grateful to them, Campbell. You know that. See, a lot of times I'm afraid that our educational choice, the civil right of a parent to choose the school where his or her child goes, that's a civil rights issue. I sometimes worry that that's painted as a Catholic issue. 10% of the children in this country go to non-governmental schools, the non-public schools. Yeah, I'm grateful for the statistics that half of those are in our Catholic schools, but there's a wide array of choice in education. And I only say that hoping that people will say, this isn't something partisan. This isn't something ideological. This isn't something anti-public school. This isn't something pro-elite. This isn't something Republican or Democrat. This isn't something liberal or conservative. This is pro-children. This is something that has been shown with unparalleled effectiveness to help all of our kids and parents and families, the economy, our communities, our nation just get better because the quality of education. And if we could just say, you know what, it's working. It's not public school unions versus Catholic schools. It's not, sometimes it works out that way. I'm chagrined to say, we got to get over that us versus them. We're in it together as we rally around the kids.
Cardinal Dolan, it is an honor to have you with us tonight. It is always good to hear from you. Thank you.
I'm glad you feel that way, Campbell.
Everything you do for us. And for
Thanks to you, Campbell. Thanks to the AFC. Thanks to all of our benefactors who are listening. It's been an honor and a joy to work with you and to be with you tonight. God bless.